flame to burn. One race that I can say I ran.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 21047.com podcast. My name is Keith Cartwright. I am the host of this show, and I am really glad to have you along listening in today, wherever it is that you're listening, and whenever it is that you might be listening in. Today's episode is sponsored by my dear friend Missy Blacker. Missy is a longtime supporter of this program and 21047.com. She sponsors me through Patreon, and Patreon is a place where you can go, and fans and friends and family can go to financially support my 21047.com effort and mission, which is just to use these stories that I have collected through my running journey with some hopes to bring light to darkness, to bring encouragement to people who may need it, to bring some inspiration to folks who may have a dream that they are sitting on and just needing that little step that you can get, little push you can get from folks that I'll interview, like in today's episode, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But thank you, Missy. If you are interested in sponsoring and supporting this effort, you can go to my website, 21047.com, TWOTIM47.com, and just click on the Support Me tab. That will tell you a little bit about the ways that you can support me, including Patreon, and there's a link to take you to Patreon where you can learn a little bit more about how you can support me in a monthly way. $5, $13, $26. There's 3 different levels, the 5K, half marathon, and marathon level, and they all come with some different perks with that, and mainly just look for different ways to honor you and recognize you for being a part of all that we're doing here. So thank you, Missy, and thank you to all. And even if you don't support financially, but you listen, that is so huge. Just take these messages in, share them with others, invite them to come along, and thank you. So today's interviewee, another chance encounter in this running journey of mine that turns into a podcast interview, and a delightful one at that. A couple of weeks ago, I found myself down in Southwest Virginia, and it occurred to me that I was down where, very near, Harvey Lewis was about to intersect the Appalachian Trail border at Virginia and Tennessee. So I decided, well, I'm going to go down and I'm going to be a part of this crazy Harvey Lewis journey attempt of running the Appalachian Trail faster than any person ever has. So I decided, being the Virginian here, I would go welcome him to Virginia. And it seemed like a great idea, so I got up bright and early on a Friday morning and went down to Damascus, Virginia. No idea where the Appalachian Trail was, which turned out to be a little bit problematic, because I found myself on the Virginia Creeper Trail for about a half marathon, not a half mile, a half marathon, before I ever got myself back in position to go hunt down Harvey. Well, when I got back to my starting point, that's when I met Miss Melanie Owen. And she was there also from Cincinnati, Ohio, to bring some supplies to Harvey and then spend a couple of days running with him. So together we made the 1,500 feet hike up from Damascus, Virginia to the Virginia-Tennessee border on the Appalachian Trail, where we ran into Harvey Lewis. But along the way, I don't know, it took us about an hour to get up there, I guess, at least. I got to know Melanie, hear her story, got intrigued with her, very specifically, her endeavor right now to go out and tackle the Badwater 135. Here's a woman that, just like any of us, started out on a running journey, and it just kept building, and you'll hear that in this interview. And I'm anxious to get you over to listen to my conversation with Melanie Owen. So here is Melanie. Well, I want to welcome Melanie Owen to the 21047.com podcast. So welcome, Melanie.
Oh, thank you, Keith.
Well, a little backstory. A couple weeks ago, I went chasing a mutual friend of Melanie and mine, Harvey Lewis, who's trying to run the Appalachian Trail in the fastest time known, and he's doing a great job of it right now. But I happened to be over in Southwest Virginia doing some work, and it hit me that, hey, Harvey's actually going to cross pretty close to here. So I stayed an extra day and made my way down to Damascus, and I got a rough start on my search for Harvey. I went like
Yes, you did.
14 miles out of the way, no way near Harvey. But then when I got back, another mutual friend of ours, Tracy Outlaw, had kind of connected you and I. And so there you were to console me and find me after being lost. And then we made our way up to the Virginia-Tennessee border on the Appalachian Trail and got to welcome Harvey to Virginia. So one of the first things I want to ask you is how you came to know Harvey Lewis.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. I met him at the Pittsburgh Marathon. He was actually a pacer. I don't think it was with Quick Bar, but he was part of a pacing group. And he was doing the 3:45 marathon. And at the time, I was like, oh, I think I can make it. You know, I'm going to stay with them. Well, let's just say the Pittsburgh Marathon is very hilly. Yeah, I stayed maybe 10 miles with Harvey. But he did say, no matter what, when you get back to Cincinnati, look me up. Well, I didn't see him for several years after that. Maybe about 3 years later, we just hooked up, and we were running on Fridays with other mutual friends, and that's really how our friendship began.
And so now you call him Coach. How did Harvey Lewis come to be your coach?
Yeah, so, I've run into the 70s, that number of marathons. I don't know the actual number. I don't really keep track, but it's around 70 plus. And, I thought, how cool would it be to maybe do these ultra marathons? I heard about him in the paper doing the Badwater race, and I thought, you know what? I think I want to do that race. Well, when I made that statement, he was like, well, you need a coach. So he really just said, do you want me to coach you as a friend? Because, we were friends at that point. And I know that he was coaching other runners, but, at the time, I wasn't exactly, this elite ultra runner. I was just getting into ultra running. But, 3.5 years later, I have quite an impressive resume now.
Well, let me ask you, let me back way up. So you say you've done 70 marathons. I'm curious, what got you interested in running that very first marathon? Clearly, you're getting ready to embark on a really ambitious journey, and we'll definitely be talking about that. But somebody who's run 70 marathons, I'm always curious about what provoked that very first one.
Yeah, so I was right out of college, and I ran cross country at West Liberty State College. I didn't get a scholarship. I just happened to be running on the campus, and the cross country coach was like, you're really fast. Why don't you come out for the team? And so I walked on, and I ran all 4 years. And after that ended, my friends that were cross-country runners said, hey, there's this marathon in Columbus. Let's go run that. I was like, marathon? Okay. And I didn't really train for it. I mean, we would run like 10 miles, and that was like a big deal. But we did not have like a marathon training program. And so we all went out there, and just so you can imagine, it was 1992, so a long time ago. And it was the Columbus Marathon, and there were like 2,500 runners that entered. And at the time, there was only like 250 women that actually registered for the marathon. So, yeah, that's how I got into running my first marathon. Some of my other running friends said, let's do this. And I ended up running like 3:46, which is my fastest known time that I have. It's my PR for a marathon.
Your very first one.
Yes, my very first one.
That is amazing. Now, did you run cross country in high school?
No, I went to a really small school in Toronto, Ohio. So we did not have a cross-country team. But I did run track, and, I was the runner that did, the 2 mile, the mile, right. and the 4x8, those longer distances.
Okay, so when the cross-country coach discovered you at college, it wasn't like you had never run competitively. You did run in high school then competitively.
Oh, yeah, I did. It was just really strange because the college did not have a track team, but had a cross-country team. And my high school only had a track team and didn't have a cross-country team. So I was able to do both of those sports. It's still running, but they are slightly different. And I really enjoyed the cross-country, being out there in the woods and jumping over logs and going through streams of water. That was a lot of fun.
So that first marathon you went on to run, sounds like 70 more. What was it about the marathon then that day that you clearly got hooked on running them? What was it about that made you keep doing them?
Well, actually, I took a bit of a break, and I was focused on my career. I did do like a marathon here and there, because the next marathon wasn't until it was 1995. So I took about 3 years break. But what really started me running a lot of marathons was once my daughter got into high school, and I knew there was going to be a period of time where I needed to find a hobby. And so that's what it was. It was, I met people in a running group, and every week we were like, oh, you're running that marathon? You're going to do that one? And so it was constantly signing up for marathons. And, over several years, they just add up.
What would you say has been your hardest marathon?
Oh, over in Portugal. So one of Badwater winners, and also he's a friend of mine, Carlos Saul. So he puts on a marathon in the northern part of Portugal. And that was my hardest marathon. Although some people may say that the Canton Marathon, there's a story behind this one, where I believe it's the Canton Marathon. They described the course as not being that hilly. And when everybody started running the marathon, we had these times that we were trying to beat. Well, halfway through the marathon, those times, our goals, nobody hit their goal. That was a hilly marathon. And it's a good story that we came back to share. And we talk about that quite often. But yeah, I would have to say the international marathon I ran in Portugal, definitely the hardest.
And so marathon is 26.2 miles. Now you're getting ready to go do the Badwater. So at some point, an interest hit you in running further than 26.2 miles. Now, for most of us, 26.2 miles is like this pinnacle. Everybody kind of shoots, I want to run a marathon. That's my bucket list. You now have bigger distances. I'm curious then, what was it that stirred in you that said, I don't think 26.2 miles is enough. I want to do more.
Well, I struggled with trying to meet the Boston qualifying times. I was as close as 48 seconds. I was as close as, 2 minutes away, a minute and a half. It was like marathon after marathon. I would be within seconds or minutes away from qualifying for Boston. And every year it just seemed like they kept changing the times to get into Boston. So I knew I'd love to run. So I was like, maybe I should try longer distances, and maybe I'll do well. And so actually, when I start the Badwater race this year, it will be 4 years to the day that I ran my first ultra training run. So I haven't been doing this that long, but I did find that I'm pretty good at it. And so I just decided I was just going to invest all my time and energy at being a good ultra runner. And Harvey says, yes, you can be both, but right now for me, the focus is on ultra running. Once I get through Badwater, then I'll shift my focus back to trying to qualify for Boston.
And I'm curious, as somebody, I think you and I talked a little bit in September, I'm getting ready to go down and run the Georgia Jewel. It's just 35 miles, but for me, that'll be an extra 10 miles further than I've ever run. And so I'm curious from your perspective, physically, mindset, what is the sort of the transition? What is the big difference going from a marathon to running ultras?
Yeah, so you have to psych yourself up for it, no matter what the distance is. Even, and I'll tell you a story today. I mean, like, when I go out to start running, I tell myself, what's the distance I'm running today? And it will be 10 miles today. I ran 10 miles. And, you know, it's so funny because once you get through those 10 miles, to go further sometimes it's hard because you've told yourself, today I'm only running 10 miles. So if I was giving anybody some advice, is like, make sure you say to yourself, you know what? Today I'm going out there, and I don't know what distance is it, 50K? Is that what you're doing? Or?
It's 35 miles.
Oh, 35 miles, yeah. So just tell yourself, yep, I'm not stopping until I get that 35 miles. And, you know, to make that transition, though, I will say that you want to make sure that you train. Like if it's a 35-mile race, I would definitely try to get, you know, over a marathon distance in. And, you know, you'll feel pretty confident, you know, if you can say get a 30-miler in prior to going to run your 35-miler. Now, this is on trail, is that right? The Georgia Jewel?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say go out there and, you know, make sure one of those long distance runs, try to get that mileage in.
That I will do. So let's talk Badwater. And Badwater is, you know, sort of this one, it's 135 miles, but there's a lot more to Badwater than the distance. Talk to us a little bit about some of the unique challenges to Badwater.
Yeah, so Badwater, yes, it's going to be the furthest distance I've ever run, 135 miles. And the qualifications to get in, I mean, you have to do at least 3 100-mile races, or, I mean, there's an easier way if you just go ahead and win one of the races that are part of the Badwater series. That wasn't a route for me, so I did have to do the 3 100-mile races. So, you know, they feel that if you can do that, you should be able to do the 135, which I feel very confident I can do. But out there, you know, one thing that is very different is on the East Coast, you're dealing with humidity. I don't know if you felt it out there, but when we were in Damascus running, you were sweating a lot, and so was I.
Yes.
But that was because of the humidity. You're not going to have that when we're out in the desert. So the things you have to deal with is trying to figure out how much do I need to drink for what I'm sweating, because you don't feel it. And so a lot of careful, close watching your intake versus, you know, whatever you're outputting. So that's one factor. The other is this start at night. So I'm going to be in the first wave, so we'll start around 8 p.m. And, you know, we're going to see nighttime, and then the next day we should be okay, but then we'll face nighttime again. And that's where that sleep deprivation comes in. So that's going to be difficult with this race. We do get 48-hour time limits, so it's like dealing with 2 night times. That's going to be a challenge for me.
And how do you prepare for that? I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm running, I start at night, I go through a night, run all day, and then I watch another nighttime come and I'm still running. Mentally, how do you prepare for that? Do you do anything to specifically train yourself to be sleep deprived? Because I think I read, or maybe you and I said, you plan on taking about 40 hours.
Yeah, that's about the time I believe that I'll take. And I don't know if you know anything about my job that I do. I travel a lot. And so I work very, very long days sometimes. And I call it my ultra running training, because there are days that I'll wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and I may not get home and I'm working all day, and then I'm on an airplane, and then I get in my car and I drive home, and I'm not getting home until late in the early morning. So although it's not 48 hours, it sometimes it could be 24 hours where, I'm just up.
Right.
But yeah, I plan to probably take a few sleep breaks during this race, just because that is a long time that for me personally to be up. So, probably like a 15-minute break during one of the nights I may have to do. And it may be that I have to take a couple of those. But I do anticipate having to just rest my eyes for 15 minutes and then to carry on. And I have already trained with doing that. So I can rest my eyes for 15 minutes. Somebody says, Mel, the time's up. I get up and I go. I just ran the Keys 100, and I took 3 sleep breaks, and they had no problem waking me up. They had no problem getting me back on the road and running. And
I don't know and I asked this when I first became, interested in Harvey Lewis. I wonder what it is about a guy like Harvey and now a woman like you that to me, it's one thing to run 100 miles, 135 miles, just that distance alone. But then to enter into these elements, the heat out there, the elevation, what is it about people like you and Harvey that it's clear in your path as we've talked, it's more and more and more. What is it about you that just longs for that sort of challenge?
Yeah, so mine may be very different than Harvey. I mean, let's face it, Harvey is an elite runner. I mean, he's going in this to win it. Well, maybe not this year because he's running 2,000 miles on the Appalachian Trail. But, right. His chances of winning the race are far greater than my chances and my ability to even win the race. So, I come from a very different running resume. And actually, with the Keys 100, I got first in my age group, but that was a bit of a surprise. And so when I told everybody that I had this goal of getting into Badwater 135, the reaction that everybody gave to me was like, you mean the race that Harvey Lewis runs? And I'm like, yes, that race. And I'm going to train, and I'm going to run that race someday. And, my running friends are like, but you're just like us. And I'm like, yes, I know. And all of you can do this. And so, I have this passion. I have this drive for anything that I do. That's where I think a lot of ultra runners are alike. When we love something so much, we're so passionate, and we have this drive, and that's what gets us to, getting to the level of being able to even register for the race. And, I met the qualifications and I will say with the help of Harvey, and I have 2 very dear friends that have also helped me, Jim White and Shar Badenhop, who have been to many races with me to get me through them by crewing or pacing, just to meet the qualifications. I think also it's not every ultra race that I would have this drive and passion for. I crewed twice, once with Jack Corey and the other with Greg Pressler. And just that experience of crewing gave me, I just wanted it so much to get into Badwater after experiencing that. Badwater is a very unique and different race. I wanted so much to be part of the Badwater family. Just the individuals who have run the race, who are part of that. I love being around them. I love to hear the stories. Badwater just represents something that, I don't know, I guess I had this gap that I was missing in my friendships, and it's going to fill it. I ran the Badwater Cape Fear, and so I did become part of the Badwater family, but running Badwater 35 will just make it even better.
You said something there, and it's just this common thread that comes out in all these interviews I do. And clearly, you're a great athlete. You're driven. You get a lot physically out of running. But almost every single person I ever talk to brings up relationships or friendships. Is that a large part of your running life?
Oh, absolutely. So when my daughter graduated high school, my husband was like, you got to find something to fill, like, this void, this time, you know. Yes, I love hanging out with you, but there's something missing. And so that's when I really got involved in the local running group. Harvey was like, Mel, you want to pace? So I joined a pacing group, a tri-state running company. They needed some, not really coaches, but pacers to help with marathon training and things like that. And so I became a part of that. And yeah, I just joined the running community within Cincinnati. And before that, I was like a workaholic, and that's all I did was work and family, work and family. And now running has a place in my everyday life, and it fills a gap that was there. I just didn't know it was there until my daughter went off to college, and, you know, I had all this free time.
You said something a minute ago, too. I'm curious about this passion and this drive you have. Is that something that you were born with, something that you had as a kid, or is that something you sort of recognized in college? I'm just curious, somebody as driven as you, is that, and you're very successful in your career. We talked enough about that, you're just clearly this driven person. I just always like to figure out where that came from.
Well, I will have to say that came from my childhood with experiences with my father. He tried so hard at every job that he had, and he wasn't like a doctor or a lawyer. He used to drive a meat truck, and he would just try to be the best driver he could be. Or, he actually sold, you're not going to believe this, but candy. And he would build up his route. And for whatever reason, he just kept getting knocked down. And then he became a janitor. And he always wanted to do the best job that he could do. And so I learned from him, like, for my career, it doesn't matter what position you have. You need to be the best at that and do the best job that you could do. So it still applies with setting goals and being a runner. Whatever that goal is, set a goal that is going to be really hard to reach, and then give 110%. But I do feel that my father has been a huge influence. You know, people would laugh, oh, your dad's a janitor? Yeah, he's a janitor, but he's a good janitor. And so, like I said, it doesn't matter what position you have. If you're doing a good job at it, that's what really matters. And same with if you're training for a marathon, if you train and you don't put the time in, and then you don't, you run the marathon and you end up not finishing, well, there's a reason for that. Did you give 110%? So I always tell people, if you give 110% and it doesn't work out, okay, let's try again. But yeah, I would say it goes back to my father.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps, really. And I loved your answer a minute ago, too, when you were talking about the friends who basically said, we're normal people, we can't go do Badwater. And you said, yes, we can. It sounds like with you, it's always a mindset first deal. Once you decide you can do it, then you figure out a way to get it done. I'm curious then you talked about a shifting of gears. You were battling for this Boston qualifier piece, and now you got shifted and really focused on Badwater, and I have no doubt you're going to go make that happen. How heavy then is this Boston qualifier goal still weigh on you?
Well, it weighs a lot on me. Although in the past 2 years, it's been very frustrating to me because I see my friends qualifying, but then they don't get to actually run the race. as long as I believe because of my age, I'm going to need a 4-hour. And I know I can do a 4-hour. I mean, before I was running, 3:56, 3:57. I just couldn't make that 3:55. But after my birthday in October, I have to get 4 hours. So it's within reach. I do want to get that, but the reality is I really would have to get a 3:55 if I was planning to actually go and run Boston.
I'm also curious if you've given any thought. I mean, Badwater clearly is going to be this pinnacle accomplishment for you. I think I read where you're only one of, 30 women even in the race this year. Is that right?
30, I think it's 33.
Right. So, I mean, you clearly already have accomplished something elite just by going. Then you'll cross that finish line, and what a huge running accomplishment that'll be. Do you have anything other than Boston in the back of your mind that's sort of this bucket list next thing that you're chasing after or dreaming about?
I really haven't thought about that, but I'm waiting for Harvey to tell me, Mel, start thinking of your goals for next year. I think once Badwater is finished, I don't have a plan for after that. We'll sit down, we'll regroup. I do have some 100-milers that I signed up for. There's one in October, Children of the Cane. It's really exciting to me. I met Walker Higgins at the Badwater Cape Fear race, and he said, hey, I'm a race director of this 100-miler. Come down and run it. So I signed up for it, and I'm excited because it's on a plantation for sugarcane. And so it's supposed to be really beautiful. I think it's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So, I'll be going down in October for that. I would say one thing that I've tried to do but haven't been able to achieve this is to run 100 miles within 24 hours.
Yeah.
I've been as close as 96 miles in the North Coast 24-hour race. Actually, I better correct this because I don't want to get this. It was like 96.7, so close to 96. And that's in September. So we'll see how I feel after Badwater. But that is another goal that I would like to achieve someday, is to do 100 miles under 24 hours.
Yeah, I have, and I've mentioned this a few times. I have this sort of, I don't know, there's been something really intriguing to me about running 100 miles. So I know when I do this 35 in September where my mind is where it's going to go to. So I may have to tap into your wisdom and help along the way to get that 100-miler done at some point. I don't know when it'll be, but I realized a long time ago I'm not going to win any races with speed. So just this whole, and it really started when I met Harvey, just this whole idea, well, I'm not going to outrun anybody, but how long can I personally run? How far can I make this body personally go? So I'm really intrigued by these 24-hour races and these ultra races. So I'll definitely be following you with a lot of excitement at Badwater.
So one thing to keep in mind, and this is something I've learned, you can run a lot farther than you think you can. And when you think you're finished, you can go out there and run farther. And the reason why I say this is, I absolutely love the Keys 100 race. When I finished that race, because it's like one of my favorite races, I am so excited after I finish. I know that I could go out and just continue on. And actually, my husband, if it wasn't a thunderstorm that was happening, he said this year, he's like, Mel, why don't you just go for another 35 miles? Since you're going to be at Badwater, that way you can make the 135. Now, if it wasn't for the thunder, there was a thunderstorm and lightning, I actually thought about doing that. But, that's the only reason why I didn't, because the lightning was so bad. But just keep that in mind. You can definitely go farther.
It's funny, and I think I told you this when we were hiking up the 1,500 feet up to meet Harvey, that I interviewed an ultra runner not too long ago, and he told me, he said, it's going to work to your favor being a slow marathoner because you're already used to being on your feet a long time, so that won't throw you off. So we'll see. I don't think it's the I don't look for the mileage to get to me as much as the elevation. That'll be new. Obviously, I'll spend a lot of time this summer training for that, but that'll be a whole new animal.
Oh, that's correct. And, I didn't mention this as another one of the challenges for Badwater is the elevation. So I think I mentioned this to you that, that was one of the things that worried me about registering. Boy, would I be able to run those sections of the race? I crewed and I did run parts of it, but before I registered, I was like, I need to go out there. I need to run this at least on fresh legs to make sure I can do this. And so I did. I ran there's 3 different mountains that I'm going to have to climb. And when I say I ran it, the reality is that I did walk some portions of it because everybody knows with ultra running, if there's a huge hill, more than likely most of the runners are walking up there, depending on how steep it is.
Right.
And so that's another thing. I see people trying to run up these mountains, and that I'm passing them, and I'm walking up the mountain. So you're exerting more energy if you're trying to run up this mountain that's in a steep grade. So, but I think you'll be just fine. For me, I try to go out slow, and I don't kill myself at the beginning. So don't feel like the reality is that 35 miles is a long time. You're going to be out there for a lot of hours. So just have fun. Go slow. Have fun. You can always pick up the pace later, but I like to go out slower.
No, I definitely will. I got one goal, and the beauty is that it's, we're running the 35 mile, but there's a 50 miler and a 100 miler. So the course is going to be open. And, we've got a mutual friend, Jenny Baker, is the race director. She's already said, as long as you're healthy, we'll let you stay out there. So now I have friends that are saying, listen, we're not going to be out there all night, so you need to be done by daylight. But that's
so. How many hours do you get? How many hours?
I think the cutoff is 12 hours, which is more than generous, and I'm confident that I can do it in 12. But again, like I said, Jenny said, hey, as long as we know you're well, then we let people finish, which is nice about a small race like that.
That's a good race director. That is a really good race director. I see some of these where, 8-hour cutoff. If you don't finish, so one time, just so you know, one time I was signed up for a 50K, and what happened was there was snow. It was snowing during the 50K, and all the markings from people going through, they were sliding and they were grabbing the trees and all the markers. So when I came through, I got lost because the markers were all gone. So let's just say I finished in 8 hours and 10 minutes. But there were other people out there after me, and the race director was nice enough. He said, I know you got lost. I saw you out there. We sent people out there.
Oh, good.
So that's awesome that race directors are willing to, maybe 8-hour cutoff or 12-hour cutoff. They're willing to give people that chance to finish. And really, in ultra running, I want to finish the race to say I covered that distance. I'm not sure time, unless you're winning the race, is that really, when my friends, they're like, hey, did you finish that 100-miler? A lot of them don't even care what my time was.
Right. No, I've said that all along. Even with a marathon, I say that, and I'm talking with you. I'm just such a big fan of running stories, why people are out there. And when you start talking with people, the stories are just all over the place. I mean, just getting to hear you today talk about this inspiration you drew from your dad, that's the stuff I love about it. And I have found in marathon running, and I'm sure it's in ultra running, you know, there's just a very few people in the race whose story is, I want to win this thing. They're very competitive. They've got a chance to win it. It's such a small percentage. Everybody else is in there for really unique reasons, really tapping into different, unique personalities. You're clearly very passionate, very driven. There's a lot of runners who run for different causes, which you just love hearing those stories. I think I shared with you, I got started running 4 years ago to honor a mom who was coincidentally talking to you. She was training for the Boston Marathon. She was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And so there's been a whole community of runners who've rallied around her. So that's the fun part for me, and not having to stress over time, just being able to soak it in and kind of follow the story wherever it goes. And a lot of times that story is the people that you get to run with and meet. So I'm curious then, before we wrap it up, is you've been so focused 4 years on this Badwater. Have you pictured or tried to imagine the emotions as you crossed that finish line?
Well, you know, when I was out there on Christmas Day, it was actually when I went out there to do my little test, we'll call it, to see if I should register for Badwater. I got very emotional. I was by myself, just reaching the top of the Mount Whitney Portal Trailhead. Will I get emotional during the race? Yeah. And I'm kind of getting emotional now. I just hope that somebody sees me. My fear is that I know that my goal is to try to get under 40 hours. You know, even if it's 39 hours and 59 minutes. As long as it's under 40 hours. However, the reality is that it could be after that, and we get 48 hours to finish. And I just worry that, there's 5 of us from Cincinnati going. And, a lot of those runners, meaning Nick and Eric and Harvey and Jack, they may be finished long before me. I just hope somebody sees me besides me and my crew. And the person that's at the finish line to take my picture.
Somebody's got to make that happen. I'm sure somebody will, but we got to find somebody between now and then who's going to commit to that. We got to have a picture.
Well, it would be awesome if the whole Cincinnati crew was there.
Yeah.
And, the saying goes, if one of the runners has a bad race and I finish before them, I will sit there and wait. And actually, I did that before. The year Harvey put the stake in the ground, I was crewing for Greg Pressler. Greg come in. I sat there for 3 hours and waited for Harvey to come in. So I got to see him come in, and I got to see him propose to Kelly, which was incredible.
That is awesome. No, I can totally relate. I ran my first marathon back at Richmond here in 2016, and there was a 7-hour time limit, and I came in at like 6 hours and 58 minutes, but there was a whole group of friends who were there waiting, and they ran across the finish line with me. And I will always say that's just one of the most powerful moments in my life, the fact that they waited around to be a part of that. And it's really become a tradition of this group that we wait around for the last person to finish, because again, these are the people, they've got some special story like you, who's just been driven, or this has been a long-term goal. And we like to celebrate that as they finish. So I hope there'll be folks there with you and for you and cheering you on as you finish this big goal. Well, Melanie, I'm really grateful that you took the time, and it's just one of these things that, I just think our paths crossed there in Damascus for a reason. I think this was part of it, getting to share this talk, and hopefully you'll come back and talk to me after Badwater so we can have a discussion about how that went and share that with somebody else who may have a Badwater dream, which is not me.
I would really enjoy that.
Well, good. Well, we're gonna follow you.
Yes.
You best of luck to you, and thank you, and go Harvey. We'll keep following this Harvey journey. I'll be, Harvey's gonna finish this Appalachian Trail, and he'll have nothing about, I'm just gonna go finish Badwater. You know that guy's gonna have winning it on his mind, even after running the Appalachian Trail.
Absolutely. That is, yeah. It's always about winning. And I have no doubt that he will finish. And I feel strongly, after being at the midway point and where he's at right now, I see a record that can be broken.
Yeah. No,
the best part about the whole thing is I love talking to my Alexa and saying, "Where's Harvey today?" And she tells me.
Technology. It's impressive. No, well, like I said, I've told many people I've talked to, I'm actually glad that day we went out there that I actually got lost and walked an extra 14 miles because it helped me get some perspective. Once I put those miles underneath me, and then you and I, that was a long hike up my legs and then back down. And I ended up low 20 miles. Harvey's doing at least twice that every day for weeks now. And just to put that into perspective just blows my mind. You just can't imagine it. So you all are a different breed in my book, but I look up to you and I just so appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you sharing your passion and your drive. I think it's real encouraging for other people to hear it. So best of luck to you.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right, Melanie. We'll be in touch, and I'm going to be following you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Have a great day. Yeah. Have a good night. See ya.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Melanie Owen. Like I said, just an ordinary runner turned Badwater 135 participant, and I'm quite sure finisher. And I know she will just really treasure being a part of that Badwater family. You could hear the passion for it in her voice. And I'm going to be rooting her on. I'll also be looking forward to rooting her on as she comes back and takes back up that Boston Marathon challenge that you can hear that's eating at her. And I just have a feeling that she will not let that one go. So anyhow, thank you, Melanie, for being a part of this. And we all look forward to chasing you out to Badwater and all the way to that finish line. So great job. And thank you for accompanying me to the Virginia-Tennessee border to chase down one Harvey Lewis, and just sharing in a moment of that adventure and part of Harvey's history. So that'll be a very cool story we get to share forevermore. Thank you all for listening in today to another running story, another inspirational story. I hope it just, if you're sitting on the edge of a dream in your life, if you've got something that's kind of eating at you, but maybe somebody has tried to tell you that you're too ordinary to make it happen, well, listen to Melanie. She heard somebody tell her she was too ordinary, and now she's part of an elite group here in July that's going to run a very elite race. So sometimes it just takes deciding, I'm going to do this thing. I'm not ordinary. I'm special, and I'm going to make it happen. And I think that's to all of you listening today, too. We all have this special in us just waiting to be discovered. So thank you for listening in today. Until next time, get out there and run hard. And if you don't run, go cheer somebody on, somebody that's headed to Badwater maybe. And if running's just not your deal, well, this is also a good place for you. Lots of life inspiration that comes from running, even if you're not a runner. Until next time, take care.